Hello, it's me, obviously. I normally manufacture videos, but I'm not able to do that at the moment, so here I am doing it manually. But just remember that I'm not really here. The person who made the video isn't really here. This is just an image of that person, and I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to this one-eyed beast. Okay, before we begin, I've put a link in the description, and probably also in a comment, to an article that I wrote, which explains the meaning of the solar system, like why there's all these planets and only the Earth has life. So like there's all this wasted space, so what are all these planets for then? And that explains that. So you don't need to read that, but you should do, to get a greater understanding of things that I'm going to be talking about, because this that I'm talking about here follows on from that. So that was part 1 and this is part 2. But you don't need to. I'll just briefly explain that the Sun represents God, Mercury represents Satan, Venus represents Christ, the Word of God, the Earth represents the wise man who follows Christ, the Moon represents his one wife, Mars represents the wise man who doesn't follow Christ, the asteroids represent the great herd of sheeple, which are the cattle people. The Greeks and the Trojans below them, they represent the two opposing sides which are used to control the great herd, and they're both in the same orbit as Jupiter, being controlled by Jupiter. And the Hildas are a third group who are with the main group of asteroids in opposition to Jupiter, but it's controlled opposition, like Jupiter's controlling the whole system. And Jupiter and all the other gas giants, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, they represent the false gods, the powerful people who rule the world. And then beyond that, Pluto and everything beyond, that represents the outer darkness, and that's not part of the scheme we're discussing here. We're discussing the inner scheme, God's scheme. That's the one we're discussing. We're not interested in that outer darkness nonsense. So let's see, I've got a little list of things to get me started. No need to show you that, but I don't know what I'm doing. This is the first video I've ever made manually. I don't know if this makes any sense now. Important point. Just want to quote something. Ezekiel chapter 8 verses 15 and 16, just to make something very clear. And then he said to me, "Have you seen this, Son of man? Turn yet again, and you shall see greater abominations than these." And he brought me to the inner court of the Lord's house, and behold, at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men, with their backs toward the temple of God, of the Lord, and their faces toward the east. And they worshipped the sun toward the east. So just remember, that is an abomination before God. The sun is just a ball of plasma. Mercury is not owned by Satan, it's God's planet. Same goes for Saturn and all the other gas giants. They belong to God and they obey God. They don't belong to Satan, and if you're obsessed with Saturn and you ascribe great power and fear to Saturn, and you keep going on and on and on about Saturn all the time, you think Saturn's behind everything, then you are a Saturn worshipper. Your place in the solar system is around the rings of Saturn. You're one of those little pieces of ice. And there's no life in Saturn's rings. Okay, let's get a list of contents going for what we're going to be learning. We're going to be looking at the constellations and the planets and everything, how it all fits together. And we're going to begin with the creation of the heavens and the earth. And we're going to go around there explaining the creation of the heavens and the earth. And then we're going to see how the whole of history was also laid out during that time. And it follows after the exact same pattern. And we're going to go through the whole of history, then on into the next scheme. And then we're going to be looking at the actual forms of the constellations themselves. And we're going to be looking at the story that they tell, these constellations. And they'll tell this great story, and we'll see how everything is in absolute perfect agreement. And then, after we've done that, then we're going to literally be getting to the heart of the matter. We're going to explain how and why all these things are. Why there are these 12 constellations and 12 disciples, and why they're divided as they are, and everything will be explained by the end. In the beginning, some things may be a bit strange and uncertain, but by the time we get to the end of this journey of discovery, we will understand things better. Before we begin, I must make an important point that some Christians may be a little bit disturbed by some of the things that I'm bringing forth if you've not been previously aware of them. The idea may come to mind, if you don't have strong faith, that everything you believe is a lie, that it's all been copied from older religions, and which in turn are just copied from the heavens, the sun, the moon, the stars, the planets, and the earth, nature, all the things that happen, the rain, the storms, everything. And even if you're not a Christian, you may then be saying, well, what makes Christianity any better than any other religion? But just I want you to remember one thing, that all these old religions, they're all created from the heavens and the earth, from observation of the heavens and the earth and the way things are. And people turn up pretending to be these gods, and stories are made about all these different gods that are pictured in the heavens and everything. But all these things were from old times, when they weren't aware of the whole picture. Like, they weren't aware of the existence of Uranus and Neptune, and most especially if you read the article, you'll know that the asteroids play the greatest part in the scheme. Without the asteroids, none of it works. You know, like the formation of the asteroids, the relationship to Jupiter, all that, none of that was known, and none of that was used in the ancient religions. But you'll see as we go through that all things are in agreement. As we go through this scheme that I'm presenting, you'll see that the creation of the universe, the creation of the heavens and the earth as recorded in the Bible, following on to the ancient history as recorded in the Bible, following on into modern history as recorded in our modern society, following on into future history as recorded in the Bible. The whole thing flows in perfect alignment, and even chemistry and nuclear physics. You're going to actually literally see pictures of the chemistry of creation taking place written in the stars, and it's going to be in perfect agreement with the formation of the asteroids, the solar system. Everything is everything, absolutely every single thing, all the timing and everything will be in perfect agreement. But one thing you'll notice is that this scheme we're presenting does not agree with the modern world's opinion of ancient history. But we will even get to see where that came from. So we've got a lot of stuff to get through, and I think I might, I don't think I'll make this all in one video. I'll make several separate videos and then put them together in one. I'm sorry I'm telling you this because I'm only just deciding to do that now. Like I say, I don't know how to make videos. This is the first one I've made. Let's see. We're getting to the end of my list. So I think I'll just make this one the introduction and then move on to the next scheme. So first thing we want to do, I'm talking to this one-eyed beast, and I will assume that it doesn't know anything about astrology, so we'll begin with a brief definition of that. So the Sun is in the centre of the solar system with all the planets orbiting around it, and they all go in like a kind of a plane, like a disc. So from the Earth, as we look, we see them going around the Earth, crossing like a band of sky. So they go up and down a little, but basically they only go across a narrow band of the sky, because the whole solar system is like in a plane, in a disc, and we see them go, you know, when they follow the Sun around. The Sun goes around once a year, and then they also follow the Sun around, but go both ways, because they go that way around the Sun and then get to the edge and come back again and then orbit. So they go both ways, the planets, and it depends on where the Earth is and all that, so how we see them and everything like that. So they don't move like the Sun, they move differently. And we might get into a little bit into some precisions about the precise things about the movements of the planets, but probably not, maybe not, I don't know. So the Sun then and all the planets go through this band of sky, and this band of sky contains 12 constellations, 12 groupings of stars, which are approximately equal distances apart, like 30 degrees. Not exactly, as we will see, that's very important, but just like the numbers on a clock, 12 numbers on a clock, but instead of numbers you've got pictures, because these constellations, these groupings of stars, are made in such a way, even though they're completely unconnected, they're made in such a way so like the brightest ones, or the ones that stand out, form into pictures. And the human mind has been created so that at every moment when you look at something, your brain is trying to define what you're looking at, and it searches like your memory and until it finds something which aligns with what you're looking at. So if someone looks at a bunch of stars, they won't just see stars, their brain will search and try and find meaning in that and try and find a picture. And you know, and most people would see the same picture. And like over the course of thousands of years, people have looked and have decided that these 12 pictures are like Leo, the lion, Virgo, the virgin, Libra, the scales, Scorpio, the scorpion with no legs, Sagittarius, the archer. And in addition to these 12 constellations, there are additional constellations above and below, which also form into pictures which are been decided upon. But that's just men. You can look at them and see something else if you want. If your brain tells you that that's a picture of something else, of course. So that's the beginning, and now we're ready to get into it. And I don't know whether to continue or not. Let's continue. Okay, so I'm going to be, I've got a picture to show you here. This is the creation of the heavens and the earth as recorded in the book of Genesis. And you'll notice these are the constellations. I'm not presenting this very well. Each planet, I noticed, this all began when I noticed that each planet lined up precisely with each of the constellations, each of these 12 constellations. And something else I noticed was the 4 elements, fire, air, water and earth, also lined up precisely. And now you may be thinking, why am I doing that? But don't worry, we'll get to that later. That's one of the things for later. But basically, fire, air, water and earth represent the 4 states of matter: plasma, gas, liquid and solid. And that's very important because that's part of it. So in the beginning then, right at the beginning of creation, there were no stars, no planets, no nothing, no sun, no moon. There's nothing. So we're not starting with any of that. None of that has been put in place. These are like the constellations, the 12 constellations, but they have nothing in them except for these 4 elements defining them: fire, air, water and earth. Fire always represents God, and the air, in the beginning of creation, there is no air. In the beginning of creation there is no air, so the air represents the Spirit of God. So in the beginning we only have the water and the earth created before the first day. So forget this day 7 for the moment. So we're beginning here. This is always the beginning and always the end. So we're beginning here, and we're going around. And the first day begins here, 7th day ends here. So we begin here before the first day. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was void and formless. And God's Spirit was hovering above the surface of the water, which was above the surface of the earth. And the earth was in darkness. Then the first day begins in darkness. And God says, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God divided the light from the darkness, so that there was morning and there was evening, a first day. So at this point the earth is divided into a light side and a dark side. And this day divides the light and the darkness. The fire makes light, and the earth produces darkness. The light goes through the air, through the water, but the earth blocks the light and creates darkness. On the second day, God created the air by dividing the water. Now this happened in 2 ways, because water is both singular and plural. The body of water was divided into an upper and a lower, so that the space in between the air was created by dividing the water molecules, into hydrogen and oxygen, as we see. So you've got the lower water and the upper water, and in between the air is created by dividing the water molecules. Now you might be wondering, that's a bit strange that. Don't worry, we're going to see confirmation of this, much confirmation of all these things. So then on the third day, the remaining water is gathered together in one place, so that the dry land appears, the earth. And all the life in the earth, the plants, are created on that day. But they do not start growing yet, because there's no carbon dioxide. We've only got hydrogen and oxygen in the atmosphere at the moment. Then on the fourth day, God creates the plasma by dividing the air. Now the air would divide naturally anyway. The hydrogen floats to the surface, the oxygen sinks to the bottom. So God takes the hydrogen, fuses it to create helium and light, plasma. And he creates all the sun and the stars and everything else, either from the earth or from the stars. Or just puts it there, because he can, because he just says the word and there it is. Then on the fifth day, God creates all the life which is in the air and all the life which is in the water, the birds of the air and the fish of the sea. Because after he's taken the hydrogen away, that leaves the oxygen behind to feed all the life. And then they start producing carbon dioxide, which can then start feeding the plants, so they can start growing as soon as they've been watered. And then on the sixth day, God creates all the life upon the earth, all the beasts of the earth, including man. And the sixth day may possibly cut into the seventh day, because right at the end of the seventh day, of the sixth day rather, God breathes life into the man and makes him a living soul. So a little bit of God is put into man. And then on the seventh day, God rested. God was, God is, God will be again. The first and the last, the beginning and the end. So I'll just quickly go through that again so you can see how it flows. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth was void and formless. And God's Spirit hovered above the surface of the water, which was above the surface of the earth. And the earth was in darkness, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God divided the light from the darkness. Then on the second day, God created the air by dividing the water. Then on the third day, God gathered the remaining water into one place, so that the dry land, the earth, appeared, and he created all the life which lives in the earth. Then on the fourth day, God created the plasma by dividing the air. Then on the fifth day, God created all the birds of the air and all the fish in the water. Then on the sixth day, God created all the life which is in the earth, on the earth rather, which lives upon the earth. Then on the seventh day, God rested. God was, God is, God will be. And I think I might stop there and take a break. But let me just point something out. Just remember this point here. On day one, when the Word was manifested as light, you'll notice that certain things keep happening over and over again. And that's one, when the Word is manifested as light. And another point, you'll notice that there's no life over one half of the circle, and then the other circle has life. And you'll see that theme repeated as well. Yeah, yeah, I think I'll stop there and continue in the next section. I've got a feeling I've missed out a lot of stuff, but that doesn't matter. I can get back to that later. To be continued.